To my YouTube channel. So this is the fifth video in the Python for Data Science series. In this video, we will go through the very basics of OOPS concept. So I will just touch the very basics of OOPS concept, which is required for data science only. And these are the concepts which you will see that whenever you are working with the deep learning models, you will see that you need to know the OOPS concept. Specifically, if you want to work with PyTorch, you will see that some of the classes you need to inherit and you need to build your deep learning models in a OOPS with the help of OOPS concept, right? So yeah, so let's get started. So let's first start with what is a class, right? So class is what you can say is kind of a logical grouping of methods and attributes, and all these logical methods and attributes are user defined, right? And once we define the class, it is kind of a reusable component. So you define it once and you can keep accessing the attributes or the method multiple times with the help of dot notations, right? We will see like how to use a dot notation and um, use the attributes and methods of a class, right? And here the method is very similar to the Python function, which we also talked in the previous videos, and the attributes are more or less similar to the Python variables, right? So this code file which I am showing you currently, so that will be available for you to access, and that the link of this code file will be mentioned in the description of this video. Now let's define a class, right? So for an example, if you want to create an organization application, right? So we can have a class of employee. So that employee will have certain attributes like first name, last name, age, and role of that employee, right? So with by creating a class, you can create a blueprint to add an employee. So whenever a new employee joins to an organization, you just have to create a new instance of that class. Instance is nothing but an object of that class, and and that is the only thing you need to do. And while creating that instance, you need to pass the parameters of like first name, last name, age, and role as an attribute to that class, and that employee will be created in the system, right? Now here you can see like we while defining a class, we can write this class as a keyword, then the name of the class. So the first letter is generally for a class is in the capital letter, which we start with. Then we have a special method. So the special method is this init method, which is kind of an initializer method or a constructor of a class, through which you initialize the attributes or the variables of the class, right? So this first attribute or the first argument which you see inside this init method is the instance of that class. So generally we by convention we write it as self, but you can name it anything, right? So by default, and like we have been using self as an instance of the class. So the first element should be the instance of that class, right? Then the other attributes of that class, which will be present here, right? So once we get that, we initialize those variables. So to create the attributes of the class, we use this self dot, then the attribute name, and then we initialize the value which is passed as an argument to the class, right? Then once we define all this, then your definition of init method is done, right? So here I have created like 5 attributes of this class, and we are kind of initializing the values of those attributes inside this init method. So whenever instance of a class is getting created, then by default this init method will run and it will kind of initialize all the attributes of that class, right? So once I define my class, then I can create an instance of the class. So instance is nothing but an object of that class. So and we while creating that class, we need to pass all the attributes which we need to uh, which we need to initialize during the while calling the while creation of this class, right? So by default, as I mentioned, the init method will be called and the initialize will happen. And one thing you need to remember, the instance of the class is passed automatically. You don't need to mention self here, right? So that will be done by Python itself, right? So here I am creating a employee with the name of John Snow with the age of 40 and a role as engineer, right? Then this is the object that will be associated with that employee, right? So if I want to access the attribute of those class, then we can use this instance and then use a dot and then the attribute name to access the attribute of that class, right? So if I write it, so you see, if I just print this employee one, which is an instance of that class, it will tell you that it's an object, right? So as I mentioned, this would be an object of this class, and then I'm using this dot method. I'm accessing the attribute of that class, right? Which is the full name is the attribute which I'm accessing. So that is getting printed here. Now we can create another employee. So say that a new employee comes and you want to add that to your database or to your system, right? So this is the way to do it. So you will create another new instance or new object, and then you can uh, you can like pass that the values to that values as an attribute for that class initialization, and then you can access that using this dot methods. So using that same object, you can also change or update the attribute values, right? So say that the employee's age got increased, right? So we want to increase that age and we want to update that age. So using this dot method again, we can access that attribute and then we can assign the new value to that attribute, right? Okay, now moving on, like class methods, right? So these are the attributes which I talked about, right? These are the class attributes. Then we can also have the class methods also. So that method will accept the by default the instance of the class, which will be like self in our like the naming convention which we are following, and then we can write the operation which we want to do in case of that class method, and then we will return that value, right? So just to give an example, like here, I'm creating a new employee, the employee 3. Then I am calling this dot email ID method, right? So that will give you the value. So without, and we need to be mindful that we need to use this first brackets to access to get the return value of those class methods, right? Otherwise, if you don't use that, so here in this case, I haven't used that, so you will not get the return value. You will just get then an object of that class, right? Okay, now you can also access the class methods using the class name itself. So this class name dot the class method, and you need to pass the object for which you want to call that particular class method, right? Otherwise, your otherwise you the object will not get to know like for which object it should run the corresponding class method, right? Okay, so then there is a concept called class variable, right? So so the previously we have seen the this variables, right? So those are class attributes or the attributes to the method. Now there is a concept of class variable, which is kind of a value which you want to initialize and you want to use it across all the objects that you want to create subsequently for that class, right? So it is kind of a constant value which will be kind of a generalized value which will be used for all the objects that you will create, right? And you can easily update that variable using this class name, then dot that variable name. You can access that and you can also change that variable's value, reassign to a new value using this class name dot variable class variable name, right? So if I run this, so you can see I can straight away access this class variable using this class name, the class name dot class variable name. Then if I want to, then again using the object, the newly created object also, you can also access the class variable, right? So this the object which I created for this employee, employee 4, then employee 4 dot country, I can access the value of that variable. Now using the class name also, you can change the variable and it will be reflected across all the object of that class, right? So these are the things which are like very basic concept which you should know about. Then there is a concept of class inheritance, right? So as I was mentioning, like in deep learning, you need to know the concept of class inheritance. So by default, the libraries which comes like TensorFlow or PyTorch, they have certain methods which are already implemented in their library. Now you want to inherit those things and you want to add the new methods or new attributes according to your use case, right? So in that case, we will inherit those functionalities of the parent class and we will add new functionalities to our new class, and we will inherit the functionalities of the PyTorch or TensorFlow's functionalities, right? And it kind of gives you the flexibility of reusability. It also helps you to represent the hierarchical relationships which can be present in real life scenario, and also it will be very easy to maintain and less development and maintenance expenses should be there, right, if you use the concept of class inheritance. So just to give you an example, like I have defined a class which is like class parent, and here I have two methods, method 1 and method 2, right? And so if I just run it and then I will create an object out of it from this class, and using that object, I will be able to access the class methods, right? The method 1 and method 2. Right now, if you create a new class, right? So just imagine that now you don't have access to this parent method that is kind of hidden from you, but you want to use these two methods, right? The method 1 and method 2. So what you can do is you can create a new class, and then again inside that you can define this method 1 and method 2, right? So that is kind of a repetitive task you will be doing, right? So if I give you an example, uh, this child method I have created, and here I have created an object out of this. And now if I just try to see like what are the methods that are available in using this object, right? So if I just do this dot, you will see method. So here, if you see, if I just run this child, and if I try to access the method P, it would be able to access. Now, if I want to access, make available the method 1 and method 2 to the child class, right? So what I have to do is I have to inherit the parent class. So to inherit the parent class, you have to write within the first brackets while defining the class, the parent class which you want to inherit, right? Then you can, then you would be able to access those things. Now, if I just do a dot here, you will be able to access like method 1, method 2, which will come from the parent class, and also the method 3, which is belonging to this child class, right? So if I access the method 1, you would be able to access the functionalities of this class. Yeah. So these are the concepts which I wanted to discuss in this video, like very basics of class, how you can define the class, what is the init method, what are like class methods and the class variables, then how we can use the inheritance method to like add the parent class functionalities to a child class. So yeah, I hope you like this video. If you like this video, please subscribe to this channel for more such videos like this. Thanks. Thanks for your time.